Good evening. I'm going to get the steers fed tonight. There's one thing that I've seen countless times, ranchers, cattle operations, they don't care about or they don't think about in this way that really decides if you're making money on your cattle operation. And I'm not talking about the overall farm. If you got row crop, I'm not talking about, your hay income. I'm not talking about your spouse's income in town or your secondary income. I'm talking about, do your cattle make you money? Looking good today. Now, if you haven't already guessed it, we're talking about cost per cow per year, or break even. Every single cow in your ranch is kind of like a little business. You have your costs associated with it, and then you have the calf that is raising. If you have feeders, same is true. It's a little bit different than a cow-calf operation, but every single animal has their own little costs that are associated with them. You can break down all the fixed costs for your entire operation and narrow it down and divide it out per each animal. And why is this important? Because often we hear, I got this for my calves this year. I took them to the sale barn and I got this price, and that price might be good. You and your neighbor might have gotten the best prices in the county, but it doesn't matter if your costs are higher than theirs. You could still be losing money. And you need to be able to know that. You need to be able to know if your cattle operation is making money or not per year, or if you're having to subsidize that with a secondary income or maybe your crop income. And then you can actually see, are your cattle actually making you money? Let's say you have vet bills, it's $50 an animal. Say you bought a new $4,000 bull. Divide that out per animal. If you got 100 cows, that's $40 a cow. Don't forget your fuel for hauling the hay, your fuel for just everyday, usage around the ranch. And if you have other things you use that tractor for, if you use it for your row crops or something like that, you can divide that out towards your row crops or your other operation. But don't skip on these things. A lot of people will forget their electricity bill. They'll think my mortgage, my land payment, that doesn't count towards my, my cattle operation. Or they'll look at their interest payment and be like, that's just a fixed thing that I don't think about. It doesn't have anything to do with my, my break even. Well, that's just simply not true. Because let's say the ultimate goal should be that your cattle are making enough money to sustain themselves. Your cattle operation is making enough that if you were to scale that up, you are making money on each individual animal. So if you were to scale that up high enough, you'd be able to live strictly off of that cattle income. Now, I know that isn't always the smartest thing to do. Diversification is a great thing because cattle prices are going to fluctuate and your profit per animal is going to fluctuate every single year. I get that. I was a commodity broker. I watched the markets for a living when I was doing that. The markets fluctuate. But back then, and even now as an egg lender, I see it every single day. Many people are not accounting for all those living expenses. They're just saying, that's my secondary income. That's my spouse's income. That's my, my row crop gets deducted from that. And my cattle are just their own little thing over here. Don't even get me started when there's all these people who say, the only way to make money with cattle consistently is to have, a spouse who has their job in town, or I have a secondary job. And it's fine and dandy if you want to do that. But the truth is you need to be looking at your cattle operation as its own specific business. If you get to the point where, you're 5 years in a row and you are subsidizing all of your other income to just cover your cattle expenses, should you really be running those cows? You have people that'll say, I get all these tax breaks and all this stuff. Well, okay, are you just doing it for the tax breaks? Is that all you're doing it for? Is that making you enough money? Are you accounting for your depreciation on the new pickups that you like to buy? Are you accounting for all of those expenses? Are you actually gaining ground? Or are you doing all this work for cattle just to, keep spinning those tires and digging yourself into a bigger and bigger hole? There are bankers out there who aren't very good people. There are brokers out there who aren't very good people, and they take advantage of people like this. People who don't calculate their true break even might just come up to them and say, hey, what do I got to do? They'll call their broker. They'll say, what do I got to do? And they'll end up putting on, a three-way spread hedge, triple the commission for the broker, and they don't even know what they're covered for. They don't know what that means. Maybe they collected a little premium, but their coverage is junk, and cattle market goes up or down enough, and all of a sudden, boom, they're paying margin call, or, they just missed out and they just basically wasted some commission. Or you have that ag lenders that are purely collateral based lenders who look at their land and they're like, oh, okay, you got enough collateral. Yep, I'll give you the money. Go buy as many feeders as you want. And it works until it doesn't. And then you just got to continue to figure out how you're going to pay me. And then you can use your secondary income to continue paying down your line of credit. And you didn't gain any equity. All you did is use this big credit card to do all this extra work, because let's be honest, if you have cattle, it's a lot of work. And then those people get to the end of their career and they've never really gained ground, and they don't have much to pass on to their kids. Worse off, they taught their kids basically go to the bank, get the money, run the operation, and at the end of the year, the banker will tell you if you made money or not. You might be thinking nobody ever does that, but it's true. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it as a broker. I've seen it as an ag lender. And I grew up in the industry. I'm not just somebody who has worked in finance my whole life. I grew up working on my family's operation. I grew up with cattle, witnessed multiple of my friends' cattle operations, and everybody does it different. You can do it different and still make it work. But we got to get to the point where our family operations are focused on how are we making money on our operation, and not comparing what we got for our calves versus our neighbor. And I'm tired of seeing good, hardworking, honest family ranches, family farmers who are getting taken advantage of with these financial products. Not just the brokers, not just the ag lenders, but also the insurance salesman, the LRP. If we want to do row crop, we could talk about the crop insurance too. There are people out there who sell these fancy things and they don't explain it very well, but they explain it more so, just the positives. They don't talk about the cons, and they're basically there to collect their commission, get their piece, and then they don't help them. The family operations, they end up wasting money. And I don't like to see that. If you cannot explain these products to the rancher, cattle operation, you should not be selling it. That's my honest opinion. And it's honestly why I started the AgriSummit community, so we can talk about these products within our own community. And I also have educational content on some of the things that I've actually learned about, the things I learned as a commodity broker, the things I learned as an ag lender, some of those FSA programs, things like that. I have educational content on that in the community. I'm continuing to make more and more content like that, based on what people want to know. So if you're interested in being a part of a community like that, check out the link in the description or ask me in the comments. But here's the thing I'm really making this video for. I want to invite you to do something different. I want you to estimate what your costs are per animal. I want you to write down all your total costs each year. And if you can look back at some of your past years and estimate it, that's great. If you're new to ranching, you're new to your cattle operation, it works for feeders too. You can write down all your costs, estimate all your costs, add them up and divide them out per animal, and just see what your break even is. See what that cost per cow is. Your estimates are never going to be perfect. This stuff all fluctuates. The feed costs fluctuates, the rent fluctuates, the electricity, all that stuff fluctuates. The more you do this, the more consistent you get with this, the better you're going to be at it. As you're going through this year's operation, or if you're feeders, maybe just this feeding term for those specific steers or heifers. If you're backgrounding, there's all different types of cattle operations. So however it fits your operation, you can go ahead and do this. As you're going through this term, you can write out all those costs, all the true costs. And when you get to the end of them, you can add them up and divide them out per animal and see where it varies from what you thought they were. You might be surprised. Then you can look at what you're getting for the animals and see if you're making money per each animal. You can see, if you're fattening steers, you can see what you made per steer. Cow-calf operation, you can see what you made per cow that year. And not only that, but if you utilize an ag lender, or if you are looking for like grant programs, FSA things, and you are doing this on your own, you are going to impress that lender so much. You're going to get more opportunities. You're going to be so much more in tune with your expenses that you're not going to be wasting money. If you have a line of credit, you're not just going to be swiping it like a big credit card. You're not going to just have these hidden costs that drive up and then you get forced to pay, interest on. You're not going to be wasting money on commission and things like that because you're more in tune with the finances. You're actually running your cattle operation like a business. And by the end of the year, you're going to say, okay, the farm made this much, my cattle made this much. And you're going to be able to see how much per animal. And then if you want to scale that thing up, you can say, okay, on average over the last 3 years, I made this much per cow. If I add this many animals to my operation, I'm going to make this much more money. Now you might have to add some more costs to be able to do that, but you can calculate that because now you have the data and the evidence to back it up. Maybe you have an investor, maybe you have an uncle, maybe you have maybe you're going in with your brother or your dad for the first time. You can say, hey, look at this. This is what we did. I got all these numbers from the past years, and I'll show you. This is what I think our estimates are for this year. Looks a little different, but here's the data to back it up, why I think these numbers are accurate. And there you go. Well, this isn't some fancy, accounting thing or some fancy new idea. It's really just inviting you to think less about the cost that you are getting for your calves or the price you're getting for your calves or the price you're getting for your fat steers, and think more of how much did it cost me to produce this fat steer or produce this calf this year? Are you already doing this with your operation, or do you have a different idea or a different approach that you think is better? Let me know down in the comments. Now, if you just saw this channel just now or you like this type of content, I'd appreciate you subscribe, share with 10 friends. The more likes and subscribes I get on this channel, the more time and effort I can put into this channel and into content that you want to hear. I appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, God bless.